anybody have any questions on the subject matter that was presented yesterday? Because I know it's not complicated, at least different to what you may have heard before. It may challenge you in your understanding of the nature of sin. Before I move on into a different direction, I just want to make sure that there aren't any pressing questions on what we discussed yesterday. I know there's a question and answer session this evening, but I want to just give us an opportunity before I move on to just make sure that everybody understood what I was saying yesterday. So, does that mean it's crystal clear to everybody what I said? Yes? Okay? So, just to summarise what I'm trying to get us to understand. The nature of man is threefold. And the governing power in the human being is will. Connected with will is conscience. Both of them have been damaged by sin. Our consciences need help from the Holy Spirit when we get to the time of the end. This is why we have in the first angel's message conviction of sin. Can't emphasize enough, this is not moral sin that's being addressed, it's prophetic sin. Our problem is prophecy, not morality. There seems to me, in my opinion, be an undue emphasis on the subject or the issue of morality. In the sense, not that we should not understand or practice or be moral beings, that's not what the point I'm trying to make, but it's to suggest that we don't understand how to behave. It's my contention that Adventists, by and large, understand how morality works. Or if you want to use the idea of reforms, most of us are aware of what's going on. And it doesn't take a lot, if you're not aware, to correct any misunderstanding of thoughts and ideas on that subject. Then we spoke about sin. Why do we sin? It's my contention again that we sin through choice, not through nature. I believe that can be demonstrated when you go back to the origins of humanity, and we see that Adam and Eve were both capable and willing to sin in sinless natures. Sin is a mystery, it's unexplainable. So I don't attempt to explain how a balanced human being can sin, except to say that it's all a matter of choice. If you choose to do something that's in disagreement with God's will, that by definition is sin. That's what happened to Adam and Eve. So when we come to our own situation and we talk about sinful nature, it's not addressing the issue that our natures have become so damaged that we cannot stop ourselves from doing sin. What's being portrayed is that our natures have become distorted and warped, and we've understood what that distortion is. It's a lack of balance between the lower powers and the higher powers, between the heart and the mind. These are in tension. And the will begins to be overwhelmed by this tension and ends up capitulating or submitting to our lower powers. Remember, the lower powers have their seat in a human being. Now, I don't want to pretend the 6,000 years of sin haven't taken their toll on us and don't have a part to play in this struggle that we have as human beings. It does. It has an influence, but it's not the complete story, or it's not the solution to the problem, if I can say it that way. A question was brought up before about habits. So habits have their part to play, but they're not the solution, again, to the problem. So once we realise that sin is a choice and not an issue of nature, it explains a lot. One of the things that it does explain, there's a controversy in our movement, is that the Lord is not waiting to do some great work for us of making us righteous or dealing with the sin problem at midnight. We could demonstrate that. I'm not sure if I'm going to have time to do that in the way that I'd like to, but maybe we will. I know some people here are waiting for me to talk about courtship and marriage, but what I want to remind you, if you haven't been paying attention, that I've been addressing this issue over my presentations, but it's been dovetailed into this prophetic discourse of the nature of man. So I have really been addressing this issue, especially when we think about the concept of marriage, and particularly the idea of being converted or entering into a new covenant. You remember I spoke a number of presentations ago that foolish virgins, that tares, people who are unconverted are considered to be what? Dogs. Remember the phrase dogs? Or the concision. So when we understand that, the terminology of dog is normally associated, it can have more than one meaning, symbols can have more than one meaning. It's normally associated with Gentiles or heathen. And it's my assertion, because all have sinned, there are none righteous, no, not one, that this idea that Paul, and you find it in the Old Testament as well, that Paul's assertion is that Adventists are to be considered and thought of as being in the same condition, in the same position as Gentiles, even though they're God's people. We've discussed that issue, yes? So, if you can turn into your notes, if you have your notes, we're on page 18. So, when I say your notes, if you go to the section that's, I think it's called Counsels of Courtship and Marriage, it's about halfway into the book. If you go to page 18, are we all there? Yeah. So we should be on page 18 and it should look something like that. At the bottom of the page, it's all in uppercase. So we're doing this for your viral book. So we just need page 18. We're at the very bottom of the page. It reads, in this letter, published in Testimonies to the Church, Volume 5, Ellen White defines what an unbeliever is. Okay, so we're going to define now what an unbeliever is. An unbeliever is one who has not accepted the truth for this time, or what we would say, what phrase do we use? Present truth. So if you go to the page 19, you'll see it's a letter that Ellen White's writing to Laura. So you know what Laura's problem is. If you look at the header, it says united with unbelievers. This is the section in the document that we're dealing with. United with unbelievers. So I presume we all know that you're not allowed to marry an unbeliever. Yeah? So normally in a discussion about courtship and marriage, with a group like this, I wouldn't even address anything along these lines, Because all of us know we're not supposed to marry outside of our faith. Yeah? Problem that we find this far along in our reform line, as we're approaching the close of probation, midnight, for ourselves, is how do we define what an unbeliever is? So that's the problem that we want to address now. Both from the perspective of the prophetic studies that we'll be doing, but also now from this perspective of marriage. So already you can begin to see the implications of this, because the definition of an unbeliever is someone who hasn't accepted the present truth. So we're on page 19. We're going to skip the first 3 paragraphs, and the next paragraph, I haven't got the references here, but if you were to, it's at the bottom of the page, it's Lecture and Testimonies, Volume 5, page 361. Yes, there seems to be a typo at the bottom of that, so it's page 361. Laura, dare you disregard, are we there? Are we all together? Yeah. Laura, dare you disregard these plain and positive directions? As a child of God, a subject of Christ's kingdom, the purchase of his blood, how can you connect yourself with one who does not acknowledge his claims, who is not controlled by his spirit? Though the companion of your choice were in all other respects worthy, which he is not, yet he has not accepted the truth that this time he is an unbeliever, and you are forbidden of heaven to unite yourself with him. You cannot, without peril to your soul, disregard this divine injunction. So I'm hoping we can see the implications of this. If we believe that this message, Daniel 11:45, is the present truth message, and if you go back to the context in which this letter is written, I'm pretty sure this is in America. It's not in one of the European tours. I don't believe so anyway. That what Ellen White's speaking about, which he says that you're uniting with this unbeliever, it's almost certain that this person, this boy, is a Christian. Whatever denomination he's from, but he's not an Adventist. So she's marking the distinction between an Adventist and someone else. Whether or not they're in the world or not isn't the issue. It's whether or not they're of this faith of Adventism. And you can see she clearly tells you that you're forbidden of heaven to unite yourself with him. So I want us to see, in the context of being an unbeliever, is also someone who's unconverted. So I presume we would all understand that you're not allowed to marry someone who's unconverted. Yes? So, an unbeliever is someone who's not of your faith. And what's the definition of faith in the context of what we're discussing? Present truth. So either they reject or they do not know the present truth. And what is the present truth message that we have? We could say Daniel 11:40-45, but it's what? It's the redemption of his people, or the everlasting gospel. So an unbeliever is someone who's rejected or doesn't know, or does not experience the everlasting gospel. I'm sure all of us can reason the implications of this. Because now you begin to see that what we've been teaching in this movement for a long time now is beginning to have implications and constraints upon your life in a way that you probably never really appreciated before. Because I said, the Jerusalem that now is what? In our present context, Jerusalem, which now is. This is how Paul describes it in Galatians. What is this? It's the Seventh-day Adventist Church, who's in bondage as Hagar was. And what are they in bondage to? Bondage to the law, because they're doing sin. What sins are Adventists doing? What's this great crime that we're doing? Right? The rejection of the message. Sorry?
Rejection of the prophetic message.
It's the rejection of the prophetic message, but some don't even know about it. They haven't even come to a place of rejection yet. So the Levites, at least some Levites, some Levites might be fighting, but most Levites don't even know what's going on. So, what crime have they committed? What bondage are they into? They're under bondage because of the sins that their fathers have committed, which is this old covenant. The fathers have done what? Eaten sour grapes. The children's teeth are set on edge. The children are paying the price of the sins of their fathers. Yes? So we discussed that. So if you're part of the conference structure, or if someone's part of the conference structure, and you're part of this movement, you begin to see how this definition of unbeliever begins to impact and constrain us. So what's the implications of this? Because you're looking to enter into marriage, could we say that we shouldn't, or it's not advisable to marry someone who is just a regular Adventist? Forbidden, it says forbidden. Forbidden to marry someone who's an Adventist, who's a regular church-going Adventist. And in all respects, is that what we read? Though the companion of your choice were in all other respects worthy. Are Adventists in all other respects worthy? They are. Adventists are worthy. But on this one point, they forfeit their right to marry with someone who's in this movement. Is that a hard saying? I think it is. That you don't. If people were to hear you say this, it would be considered the grossest form of fanaticism that's entered into this movement. For a long time, if ever. But this is what I want us to understand. That this idea of an unbeliever is someone who has an unregenerate heart. An Adventist just will not accept this truth. They cannot believe that they are lost and undone in sin. And the solution to the problem is this gospel message, this prophetic gospel message. You may say, but I've given my promise, and shall I now retract it? I answer, if you have made a promise contrary to the scriptures, by all means retract it. By all means retract it without. Far better take back such a promise in the fear of God than keep it and thereby dishonour your Maker. For years I have been receiving letters from different persons who have formed unhappy marriages, and the revolting histories open before me are enough to make the heart ache. It is no easy thing to decide what advice can be given to these unfortunate ones, or how their hard lot can be lightened, but their sad experience should be a warning to others. If you're young, and the definition of young is not in age, if you're a youth, and I understand when Ellen White says about a youth, she's talking about someone who's not married. So if you're single, and you're contemplating marriage, if you're desiring marriage, then it would be well for you to take heed to this counsel before you have this sad experience. It should be a warning to us not to marry someone outside of this message, because you're headed for problems far greater than you anticipate. If we even could begin to realise the problems that we're going to be facing as we progressively enter into conflict with the church, you would see that this counsel is sound and advisable. Any questions on this issue about the definition of an unbeliever? The definition of an unbeliever is someone who does not accept present truth. And I want us to understand why. Because the present truth message is about someone who enters into covenant with God. This covenant is a renewal of the heart. If you don't enter into a covenant, the whole house of Israel, the valley of decision, is just dry, dead bones. There are none good, no, not one. Whatever you may see with your eyes, whatever you may perceive, whatever you might think, how good Adventists are, you have to decide if you believe in righteousness by faith. What is righteousness by faith? It's making the right decision by exercising faith. You either have to go to the Word of God, and if it says the whole house of Israel is just dry, dead bones, you have to decide, is that true? Or go to your most perfect, beautiful church here in Zimbabwe, to a nice conservative church, and if you're a man, you see this beautiful young woman who's clean, fresh, has all the attributes of Christianity, or vice versa if you're a sister. What do? Do you look at that person and say, can't believe they're not converted? Or do you take the Word of God as your standard? You really need to make this decision. Any questions on that?
My question is on those that do not know the present truth. They are unbelievers because they do not know present truth.
Yes.
But all of us here, we did not know the present truth. Then we got to know about it and we believe it, and then we got converted to the present truth. So my question is, now that we have heard and we've come to an appreciation of the present truth, are we then not supposed to go to our Adventist friends and teach them these things so that they also know and they get into the same experience as we are?
So not only when you said, are we supposed to, the word that I will use is not supposed to, it's required to, on pain of death. On pain of death from God, you are required to go to the house of Israel, which is a rebellious house, and give them this message. And some will accept. This condition of not knowing is not some badge of condemnation or criminality. Through no fault of their own, Adventists have been born into a system that is corrupt and not fit for purpose. It's not a condemnation on an individual. Even the whole church as a whole, excluding the leaders, the laity, are not at fault. Remember Steps to Christ we read. What you need to understand, and the reason they don't understand is because they've never been educated. So I want us to really understand this, that in my presentations, when I talk about this group of people, it's not with some kind of condemnation that I say these things. We are required to go to the house of Israel, and if you do not, their blood, when they die, which they surely will, because they're unconverted. If you're unconverted, for whatever reason you remain unconverted, you have to die. God can't break the rules. But the person who had opportunity to help that unconverted person, if they don't follow through with that calling, they will bear the responsibility of that punishment as well as the person who will die. So both people will end up dying, but the greater condemnation will be upon us. So I want to make that clear, if it wasn't clear. In Revelation 10, it speaks about the eating, which is sweet, and the digestion, which was bitter. That bitterness was what? It was the great disappointment, October 22nd, yes? But in Ezekiel, what's the bitterness that he is experiencing when it's sweet in his mouth? What's the bitterness that he's going to experience? Because it's not the same context. It's not talking about October 22nd. You can't find that in the context of that chapter. The bitter pill that he, or bitter experience that he has to face is what? The rejection of the message by his brethren. And most of us don't like rejection. We don't want to confront people and get into an argument because we don't like to fight. Because someone said the other day, is that the character of Christ? To actually start fighting and getting into conflict with people. And my answer to that was, most of us, I think, are not really fully understanding what the character of Christ is in all its manifestations under all circumstances. So these bitter experiences, we're required to go to our church and give them this message, because most people won't accept it, and by and large it will cause conflict and trouble. As an example, so if this is true, and I believe that it is, this is bitterness. If you're in this message today and you already have thoughts and ideas about someone who's not in this movement that you feel attraction to, I suggest that this is a bitter experience for you to have to deal with. That now someone is saying, actually you're not allowed to marry this person. And then you get to the problem that if you say you're not allowed to marry this person until they get into the movement, if you're not careful, you begin to draw them into the movement for the wrong reasons. Then it becomes difficult. So, I'll tell you,
Now, my question is in regards to the one that would say reject. Okay, in this regard, in this sense, that how are we who are here in this movement to know that this person is rejected when we have been confronted with it in this sense? That sometimes when someone has been confronted with this message, okay, like if you read in Acts of the Apostles, the account of Nicodemus, right, he didn't openly show that he believed in Christ when he went to Christ night time. Okay, and then later on, after Pentecost, that's when sometime in the future, that's when he believed, that's when he openly showed his conviction and he acted upon his faith. So how are we to determine that this person has been confronted with it? Maybe sometimes for various reasons, they fear to openly show, okay, that they have been convicted and they believe what you are believing or what you are believing in. But they just don't come, maybe they just don't come here, for reasons, they just know it themselves. So how are we to determine and how are we to know if I make myself clear?
I would suggest this. Can two walk together unless they're agreed? If you're looking at, if you're a sister and you're attracted to this man, and this Sabbath you're in this meeting room and his conference church over there, what's he saying to you? He's saying he's not on the same page as you are. I'm not making some kind of subjective analysis of where he is and why he is where he is. It's not an accusation or a condemnation of his belief system. What I'm saying is the sister needs to realise that he's not walking where she's walking. For whatever reason, maybe he doesn't have enough information, maybe he doesn't like this message, maybe someone in this message mistreated him and he just doesn't want to attend. Whatever the reason is, when it comes to the subject matter of marriage, he's not walking with the sister. They're not together, and therefore he shouldn't be, or she should not be contemplating marriage with this person. Whatever his motivation of why he's doing what he's doing is. So this is not a prophetic study to condemn people who don't accept this message because it wasn't delivered properly to them. So I'm not saying they don't have an opportunity. But if you take this history of Nicodemus, when he speaks to Christ, why is he speaking to Christ when it's pitch black? So that no one can see him, because he's ashamed of being seen with Christ because of his high status. And Ellen White says, she calls him the proud Pharisee. And what's bad about Nicodemus, because sometimes you think he's so good, is that when Jesus talks about being born again, he understands exactly what Jesus is talking about. His problem is, what is his problem? Because the born again experience is being applied to whom? To him. And he can understand it. He went into his mouth, he worked it out, but when it hit his heart vomited it out. He says, I'm not accepting this. The proud Pharisee will not accept that he needs to be born again. Because the born again experience is for whom? Gentiles. You know, this born again experience is nothing new. The Jews had the same understanding, they had the same phraseology when applied to Gentiles. But when it comes to self-application, they don't accept it. This is the Laodicean condition. Do we all know that the church in the time of Christ was Laodicea? Yeah? It's something we haven't discussed in this prophecy school, but it's an important concept to understand. that the 7 churches of Revelation 2 and 3 are just a repeat. We think that's the primary application, but it's a repeat of the history of ancient Israel, from the receiving of the law at Mount Sinai all the way to Laodicea in the time of Christ. Anybody else have their hand up?
Like the issue of wheat and tears, how then what do we use to measure? Because you're both in this movement, you've accepted the prophetic way, which part do you use to determine the choice of the person? The moral part or the...
So my sister's question is this. I was waiting for this question. I was surprised it must be in your mind. If I'm saying you can't marry an unbeliever, and it's clear to see if they're not here today, they're a what? An unbeliever, because they didn't want to come to this prophecy school. So that's easy to determine, whatever their reasons are. But we've also defined unbelievers as tares. Now remember we said the wheat and the tares are the 12 disciples and the church, the conference structure. But we also said that the wheat and the tares are the 11 and the 1. Yes? Whether you think of it external to the movement or internal to the movement. So, what do you do then? You say, well, how do I know who the unbelievers are? Because they all profess to accept the message. So my sister's question is, when you look at the tare, do you analyse it by their morality or by their prophecy? So I've addressed this issue numerous times. You can't address it through morality, because you don't know who's good and who's bad. Yes? Do you accept that premise, my sister? You don't know tares by their morality. You just can't tell. Because this is the hand-up that Adventism has got. They say, we don't need your little prophetic message over here, because we've already got the Adventist message, by which they really mean the Reform message. Because we're saved by reforms, we're saved by works. So we don't need this extra bit. So the solution to this problem is easy, isn't it? Matthew 25. The midnight cry, close of probation, shut door. 1840. No, we won't put 1840, we'll put April 44. So, the wise and the foolish are here, and they're travelling along, and they get to when Christ is supposed to return. He's supposed to return here, isn't he? In April 1844. And he tarries. The bride is ready, but she needs to patiently wait. So they sit here tarrying all the way through. At the midnight cry, the foolish fall away. And then they enter into marriage. So in this history here, you only have what? Wise. So we can bring this concept or this idea into our own movement, and at a basic level, I don't know how familiar we are with predicted before midnight and its relationship to midnight, but if I were to say that the foolish and the wise get separated at midnight, I think they get separated before, but if we separated them at midnight, yes? So if we did this midnight, and say we say this was midnight cry, and say we said this was 9/11, that's not quite correct, because that should be midnight and this should be predicted before midnight. But we say we go with this simple version. So my sister's question is, if you're not allowed to marry unbelievers, and we've got a number of unbelievers in this congregation, for sure. Yeah? So we're not all weak. We're not all wise. I don't know well enough to make that assertion, but prophetically, in a group this size, you're going to find some. So what would be the sensible thing to do? If you're not sure, you say, oh, here you are, young man, likes this attractive sister over here, all looks good, but she's a foolish virgin. And he can't tell. So what should he wait for? Wait till she leaves. Then you're going to get all the wise boys and all the wise girls together, and it will be safe. So why not just wait till after midnight, and it will be safe. It'll be a no-brainer. In fact, what you could do is, when midnight strikes, we'll all come back together, but only the single people will come. We'll leave all the married people at home. I'll come here, bring me over here, and we'll just have two columns, one of the boys and one of the girls. Okay? Because remember now, church triumphant, and we're all perfect, aren't we? Yeah? So if you're all perfect, it doesn't matter who you marry. Because we're all perfect. Yes? You don't even need to choose. So what I'll do is, we'll just do a countdown based upon your date of birth. So we don't have too much of an age disparity. We've all the young ones at the front and all the old ones at the back. And we've got 10 boys and 10 girls. And I'll just marry you off, pair by pair. Because you're all wise. I know we're smiling and laughing, but seriously, because all the foolish have gone, you're all believers now, and it doesn't matter who you're going to marry, because you're perfect. And so you're all going to have successful marriages. Do you believe that?
No.
How can you not have a successful marriage if you're all wise and you're all being sealed?
Compatibility. Maybe I need to understand. On the reform line, the 9/11, the midnight, and the midnight cry, are we referring to it from a prophetic perspective or from a personal perspective? Because I know every individual has their own reform line from 1989, increase of knowledge.
This is a movement reform line, not an individual
reform line.
Yes. By the time we get to midnight, all of us will be sorted out one way or the other. There's 50 people in this room, more than 50. We all came into this movement. If we begin at 9/11, some of us came in before, but we would do this. We all came in. You pick your day. If you consider baptism or whatever, or you pick your birthday. But here, it's the corporate affair. Doesn't matter when you came in. Everything finishes here. You're not going to finish one after another. You'll finish at once, even if you came in not together. Yeah? So some people have been around for this long, some for this long, and some for this long. So it doesn't matter how long you've been in here, you're all going to get to the same place. So my question is, should we all wait, or the young people, the single people, doesn't matter if you're young or old, should we all wait until this time period? Because then you're certain that you can't marry a foolish unbeliever. Because people advocate that in this movement. I've heard it advocated, if you wait until all the foolishly, it'll all be said. By the way, because this isn't really correct, it's closer than you think. This is midnight, and this is literally before midnight. You don't even have to wait for midnight for it to happen. So is that a good idea? A good idea, my sister? Why not? Why do you say it's not a good idea? It's guaranteed then.
Well, I thought the period from 9/11 before our probation period, it's a period where the Lord is sort of working on our character, making us stronger, rather than and one of the reasons he's doing that is the people who are even the foolish as well. And I thought in my mind that marriage is one of those things also that helps us to, I don't know, prepare for that time. And I'm thinking it's better done before than at that time.
So it's better, so my sister's saying, oh brother.
I would say you should not wait based on the logic that there's no marriage after.
Based on what logic?
No marriage after.
No marriage after?
TBM.
Where do you get the logic that there should be no marriage after PBA?
Like I said, it's a logic that is pushed.
It's logic that's been pushed, and you hold to that logic. So you're the one who's pushing that logic. How do you know the source of it? I always mention your name on video. You're lucky. So my brother over there is pushing this logic that you're not allowed to marry after that time period, so better get it all in before. Brother at the back.
Just to add, is it only possible to identify a non-believer after the protection before midnight? The reason why I'm saying it is this, because if we're able to recognize that the Seventh-day Adventist churches are unbelievers, like we're doing, can we not use the same logic to apply to this movement? If we're going to use the same criteria of what present truth is. I know that we say that the present truth is 40 to 45 and everything it encapsulates. But my question would be, what of someone who's not keeping up with the advancing light at this time, which you would term present truth? For example, the Battle of Prophetic is the message that's been opened up now. And you have people that are not subscribing to it. Do we not define those people as unbelievers way before midnight and the protection before midnight?
Yes. So his point is that we can identify the wheat and the tares by their acceptance or rejection of this prophetic message. That was the problem. Is if I ask you now, who rejects raffia? Take your choice of the sisters. What they don't realise is tomorrow we're going to have some new light. And then tomorrow you'll be able to identify the unbelievers. But today, because they're all assenting to it, it's not that straightforward. Which is why this logic happens and let's wait. It's all done and dusted. But so that we're clear, this is not my logic, and I do not agree with this.
Yeah, I think is more of a question. In our movement, don't we believe the Sabbath and the marriage are twin institutions?
Okay?
And if ever that being the case, the restoration of marriage and of the Sabbath, they are supposed to be being restored before Sunday, as Satan has uplifted his standard of a false marriage and a false Sabbath. And if ever he has done that already, there should be a restoration of those two institutions that he done away with them.
Okay, so this is Sunday law, yes? So, your logic or your argument is that you need to be married before this event.
Like a matter of preparation for restoration of both the twin institutions.
Yeah, but when you say restoration, you don't mean improve your marriage. You mean get married. That's what you mean, isn't it? You get married on the 6th day, not the 7th day. Or am I misunderstanding your logic? Because you're saying what Brother X over there is saying. Is that right? You're agreeing with him?
I was asking a question. I was inquiring.
Oh, I don't know what we say on this message. Okay, we say the restoration, but I'm asking what does it mean? That's his logic. He says get married on the 6th day, not on the 7th. I think. Is that your logic?
I've accepted what you say, but you say an unbeliever is someone who does not know your faith, who rejects or doesn't know your faith, who rejects the experience of the last person. So then someone comes to them with this year, they don't need it next year. Next year there's an advancement of life. They don't know that person yet. Is that still a criterion?
This probably goes back to what my brother at the back saying. I'm not trying to say if you came to a prophecy school and you didn't, defines whether you're a wheat or a tare. Because some people just can't make it.
No, I'm talking in terms of, okay, today we learned of the battle of Raphia. Maybe they get more light next time. I don't know.
Yes, that's what I said. That was my argument to him. Tomorrow we're going to have some new light, and your acceptance or rejection of that will determine or expose what you are. Because you don't suddenly become a tare. You're suddenly exposed as a tare. So that's why I'm saying there are people in this room who all agree with Raphia, but some of us are still unbelievers in here because we hold Raphia where? Where is Raphia being held? In our mind, not in our hearts. And we are still running with the system. Maybe we'll be on the right hand of Christ and get some good position somewhere along the line. So all God needs to do is put some more pressure on you to make you admit that you really don't like this message. My brother.
To be honest, Elder, I think
As opposed to what you meant before, you weren't honest.
no, I'm saying that logic that I said before, to be honest, it's not just in the movement, but it can be in this room. So if you are able to clear it up for us.
This movement is this room. This room is this movement. They're the same thing.
So if you are able, maybe just to shed light on it.
Now, Paul, we're all aware of Paul, yes? Paul can be considered, depending upon the application that you make, as what? A priest and a Levite. Yeah, you can consider him both, depending on the context. Yes? Because when Paul gets converted, the road to Damascus, who does he have to go to? Yeah? He has to go to a priest to be baptized, to enter into the movement. And then, when he goes to Jerusalem, it's Barnabas that does that work, brings him into the church. So, there's much more comprehensive ways of understanding who Paul is. Now, we know that character is not developed in a crisis. Yeah? It's exposed. And I think someone said that as well. I think it was my sister, she said that, marriage develops character, we're supposed to develop character here, so better to get married here than afterwards. And I think that logic is quite reasonable. We're going to be in a crisis time here. Because now, you've come to the time period which is not dealing with the priest, it's now dealing with the Levites, and also beginning the work for the 11th hour workers. Yeah? So let's not draw it this way. Let's draw it this way. We've got AD 27 and AD 34 and AD 70. So this is 9/11. This is Sunday law, and this is close of probation, the destruction of the world. This is the history of SDAs, and this is the history of the world, or the Gentiles. When does Paul come into the movement? He comes in here, yeah? Where you begin to give the message to the world. Now, our reform lines are much more sophisticated than this now, so this is just a simplistic overview. So we would probably think about this way years ago. Now it'd be much more refined. So Paul's in this time, and now we're in a crisis. And if we go to 1 Corinthians 7, what's the gist of 1 Corinthians 7? What's he going to basically be saying? It's about marriage, isn't it? Most of the chapter's about marriage. What's he saying about marriage? Do it or don't do it? All the single people should know these chapters, shouldn't they? And they're not answering them. You've not read it.
He's advocating more.
Sorry?
He's suggesting that you don't.
Yeah, the whole gist of the chapter says don't get married. Yes? But Paul's in this history, in this crisis. This is the time period when the gospel has gone to all the world, isn't it? Yes? Are we okay with that? So we can go to Colossians 1:23. If you continue in the faith, grounded and settled, and be not moved away from the hope of the gospel, which ye have heard, and which was preached to every creature which is under heaven, whereof I, Paul, am made a minister. So Paul's a minister here in his history. And what angel is this? Which angel's history is this? The third angel. And this is the history of the second angel. And this would be the history of the first angel. So when you get into the history of the third angel, you've hit a crisis, and character is not going to be developed, it's going to be demonstrated or manifested. So we've got a demonstration. Here the gospel is going to be taken to the world. Yep, public evangelism now is happening. We've hit the crisis, and this is the context of where Corinthians is written. And what's he saying in Corinthians chapter 7? He says, don't marry. So I would suggest, based upon this logic, that if you're waiting to get rid of all the foolish virgins before you marry, because then it will be safe, because we're all perfect, you've probably left it too late. I'm not saying you're forbidden to be married in here, in this time period, because even Paul doesn't forbid you to be married. If you read Corinthians 7, it says, in my opinion, it's best not to. So, with Paul, I would suggest it's probably best not to marry in the history of the third step, but rather in the second. So I think it's probably better to marry here, which brings up the dilemma that if you're not careful, you might end up marrying a foolish virgin, someone who's unconverted, which is a nightmare. The worst nightmare that you could ever imagine. So I've run out of time. So we'll continue this thought, this idea in my next presentation. And just so that we make sure everything... Is Sister Dorian that's presenting next? Is that right? Yeah, okay. So, I'm sorry we're past time. Could we only have a 15-minute break so that we can try and make up some time? Please come back on time, 11:15. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness and mercy as we consider the subject of marriage and how we should approach this ordinance. We realise that this is such an important issue that we enter into holy ground when we discuss this subject, and we should take our shoes off our feet. Lord, help us to realise, even though it may be bitterness for some people even bow down before you now, that you counsel us not to marry unbelievers.